over on the left-hand side, shared with me, which is everything anybody else ever created and shared with you personally or the select board.
But the organization of it is.
There is no organization,
No.
okay.
It's, it doesn't.
I can't find any, I don't know how to use it.
I will
It's
show
not,
it.
it's not an easy task. Are we all set? All right, so go back to the agenda and probably continue with what you need.
Two quick items. The first, the flashing LED speed limit signs have been installed on Bear Road. I've only heard and seen 2 complaints about them, but I have had people call me and say thank you, especially if you live on the road.
Right.
Slowing them down, and I actually think it's working.
Good.
And the signs are set up so that they only flash for a couple hours in the morning during the commute and in the evening during the commute. So they're not flashing all day long and all night long, so.
Okay. I was wondering, because I didn't see them.
Yeah, sometimes you drive by, you don't see them on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we set them up that way.
They don't have a
They
time
only-
period,
Yeah, they only flash during the high traffic volume time.
which is in your morning commute to work.
Morning commute and the
and
folks coming home.
Yeah, okay.
And late afternoon. Okay. This morning, actually for the last couple of days, we've had a heat issue downstairs. We did not have heat on the north side of the building downstairs. Townsend came in today and they had to replace the master thermostat, digital thermostat that was in my office. And then they had to replace a fuse that was in the main mechanical room someplace.
Okay.
So I'm estimating it's probably gonna cost about $250 to make that repair for Townsend.
Okay, purchase order 1888 to Townsend for thermostat and fuse in the amount of $250.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Fire station had heating problems too, had Townsend come in. Wasn't a good heating time for town around.
That's all that I have for the board, anything for me?
Negatory.
Detail,
Now,
right?
news is good news sometimes.
He gets the whole thing?
Just,
And then I'll submit it when I get the.
Yeah.
the invoice.
So, yeah, I don't think you have to actually stay for this, but I'd like to make a motion that we adjust the detail rate effective August 1st of 2019 to $44 an hour.
I'll second it. Any further discussion
As of August 1st?
of 2019?
2019.
So it seems like this was an oversight that
We think we did it, but we have to go back and
To
look.
how much an hour?
44.
44 again.
It should be 44 or overtime, whichever is greater.
Okay. Can you change that?
Because there are 2 full-timers that make more than 44 an hour, so, on the detail rate,
On the
so.
detail, okay, okay. So 44 overtime,
Whichever's greater.
which we,
Whichever is greater,
okay. for the
Thank
detail.
you.
All right. Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries.
Folks, have a great night.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, Bob.
All right. Where are we?
Probably.
Okay, so we're at town meeting. Oh, I should have done the community input, just because we
Yeah.
didn't do it before. Community input? Alrighty, lively crowd over there. All right, so we are, Bobby's not coming in here now, probably, yeah.
Consent
Um,
calendar?
Oh, yes. Go ahead. Motion to accept a consent calendar as of,
We could just do that by consensus,
Yep.
yeah?
Great.
consensus? Yes? Okay, we're all set on that. Highway's not coming in, right?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I don't know if fire's coming, so we'll just keep on going and fit him in the count. All right, so 2020 town meeting, meet the moderator.
So he's coming in on Monday, the 27th, to talk about the warrant with you and the deliberative session and how things are going to go. He'll be here at 6:30. Just a reminder that Monday night is a public hearing, 6 o'clock for the transfer station ordinance.
Just calendar.
Make sure you remind them to, I would assume that Ed would want to be here for it.
Okay.
All right. Warrant?
The warrant. So the warrant needs to be finalized and posted by Monday, but if that can happen tonight, all the better. You have a new version in front of you. It is the same as the most recent version you've seen, with the exception of Article 13. The police cruiser payment had not said raise and appropriate $13,000. It just said something not quite that. So that language was cleaned up, and then a recap of our snafu on Saturday, that the forestry vehicle was not discussed at the public hearing, but because it is in the budget document, the operating budget, the Department of Revenue says that we can proceed with that, so that is included in the warrant. So all the articles have the select board recommendation because you all chose to put it on here, so I'm bringing that to your attention in case you want to change any of that before you approve the final version. Also, all of them are now marked with the budget committee recommendation because they did recommend all of them. So the things to think about are, wording of any of them, by the way. This has now passed the pre-review of the Department of Revenue, which is not the same, they would say, as legal review, but at least it passes their muster. So you have 3 petition warrant articles. Those do not have a recommendation from you all. You can choose to recommend or not recommend, or not include a recommendation at all.
So, what is a petition warrant article?
A petition warrant, so articles can only come onto the warrant by way of the select board or the planning board with zoning ordinance revisions, or by petition. The law allows that a petition with the signature of 25 registered voters or a certain percentage of the population in a bigger community, but in Rollinsford 25 passes the standard, that they get to put something they want voted on the warrant, and so you need to include that. So we have 3 that came in. There was a 4th for a zoning amendment that didn't meet the deadline for zoning amendments, because we all learned the hard way that zoning amendments by petition have a different deadline than other petition warrant articles, because they have a different process, because the planning board has to have their public hearings for those. So a petition warrant article is the people's desire to vote on something that maybe the governing body doesn't want to put or doesn't think to put on the warrant.
So is it the case that, is it typical that it's done outside of, because they could easily just come in and say, I would like this on the ballot, right, and we could recommend it, but is the case that people just don't want to do that sometimes?
They either
Or
would,
they were concerned that we wouldn't be interested in it?
or they just didn't want to take the time.
Yeah.
You can't speculate about people's motives. That certainly is a way to get something on the warrant. People certainly could come to the board and have ideas and discuss the ideas and maybe even write it together, and then the board can choose to put it on there. And you can even choose to put it on the warrant and not recommend it, but because you just respect somebody's desire to have it voted on or something, you really can do that.
Cool.
Okay, so we need to address 7, 8, 9, whether we recommend it or not, is what we need to do. So
Yep.
let's do Article 7. What is your desire for Article 7?
I wouldn't attach any recommendation or not recommendation. I would want to see what this is going to do, how this would impact us financially.
Well, you looked that up, didn't you?
Well,
No, from the petitioner.
what their effect would be, like,
Show me the math. How would this affect the town?
Well, we've done some math about it, and we've come to find that, so for those of you who are not looking at the piece of paper, this is about changing the benefit amount for those who qualify for elderly exemptions, and then increasing the benefit amount, and then also increasing the income and asset qualification limits, so that more people would qualify. So anecdotally and pretty obviously, if you raise the standards, then more people will qualify. The more people who qualify, the more the tax rate goes up to compensate for the benefit. In other words, everybody else pays for that benefit. So that aside, where we currently stand with our qualification standards, I haven't looked at the benefit, but with our income and asset qualification standards, we are meeting most cities and towns. There are not a lot of them that have higher. And those that do have higher qualifications tend to be wealthier communities with higher assessed values. Because if you think about, so for example, Bow has higher standards, but property is worth more in Bow. So when you take $100,000 off of the value of a single-family home in Bow, it has less of an effect on the overall taxable property than it would in Rollinsford, because Rollinsford's assessed values, a two-bedroom home in Rollinsford is probably not worth the same as a two-bedroom home in Bow, is what I'm trying to say. And so that variety changes the effect of
Sure.
these things on those communities. So while what we do offer, it has been on the books unchanged for as long as I am aware, it is also in line with what approximately 200 of the 246 cities and towns in New Hampshire offer.
So what was the age categories? Was it down to 65?
Yeah, I believe those age categories, you can't change the age categories. You can only change what is the benefit of, when you are in those age categories.
Why can't you change the age category?
Well, because the law lets you do what you can do.
So they say you're not old when you're 60, just when you turn 65? 4 more years. I thought it was 4
Live them
more.
up.
Okay, no, I didn't understand that, I didn't know that, so, okay.
So the age brackets aren't changing.
But the increases. are.
Right, so that's why they have them listed, and it says increase from what's existing to what's changing. So they're not proposing to change the age brackets, just the benefit would change for each bracket.
If you meet the income and the asset,
Right.
both of
So-
those.
Offhand, about 20% of our population is, I don't remember if it's over 60 or over 65, and then another 20% of our population is over 50. So the impact would be huge. I can't speak for what the income and asset qualifications of people are, but anecdotally, the impact would be large. But we still have lots more data diving to do about it.
Okay, so what is the desire of the board?
I would not offer a recommendation, like just not, you can just not do it, yeah.
You can just
Okay.
omit a recommendation.
I would vote for omit.
That's, I concur with that.
I'd like to take a stand, but clearly I'm being overruled.
No, you're a board of 3 because you're supposed to be 3 individuals,
What would
so
you
if
like
you
to
have
do,
something to
Denise?
say, it's
Not
your power to
recommended.
say it.
Not recommended?
Yeah.
Okay, I would lean towards not recommend, so.
Look at what you just did. Power to the people, you just swayed a vote.
I was 50-50, but I gotta take it, you gotta land on one side.
I think that, if someone
I've
came
spoken to the
in,
people, Denise is the people.
I just think that if someone was really passionate about this, they could have had a conversation with the board first.
Well, certainly.
So,
What do you think, Sally?
It's a disaster.
yeah, I think it's just, right now, I would say we don't recommend it. Maybe we need to look at it next year as one of our little projects to do, but, I mean, this year after. But-
Well, because it will be presented at the deliberative session, and because the deliberative session can change it, but has to
How can they
maintain.
change that, if it's not money related?
Oh, they can change any,
They
you
can
can't
change
change
words?
zoning, you can't change zoning articles, but you can change,
Petition ones?
sure,
Oh, okay.
but you have to maintain the intent.
Okay.
So you can't turn it into, we're, gonna give children within certain other ages different exemptions. I mean, you have to maintain the intent and within the limits allowed by law, but, there will be discussion at the deliberative session. So I would anticipate, who's to know, but it raises the question, what is a reasonable benefit amount and what are the reasonable qualification standards? So,
And if is the case that other towns also haven't looked at their elderly exemption limit, which is a possibility, but maybe someone will bring that point up at the deliberative session.
well, right,
No, people are like, I don't agree that this should be done, then someone says, well, the town, all the other towns are wrong too, which could be the case.
but I think it's important to know what our median income is and, a little bit more about our demographics so that we can try to project. You can't, even if 30% of the people would qualify, you don't know that those 30% would apply.
That's
So there's
That's
really
true.
no way to actually determine what the effect would be.
But clearly, when someone does a petition, it's based on what you and your family, or you and your, area, this is gonna help you. Versus what is it gonna do for the whole town? That's what petition articles are about what it will affect the people who are signing those petitions.
Should we add, I don't know if this is we're past wording, but should we add any wording as to what the grounds for elderly exemption is?
You cannot.
Okay.
No, not high. So,
So you
Oh, I
can
see,
bring it up
because
in
it's our
discussion
petition.
and also keep in mind that now that we're past getting the budget printed, I'll be working on the voter guide. So
mhm.
the voter guide is all about trying to help people understand the effect of warrant
Mhm.
articles and what we're proposing and why. And so we can speak to it some, in as much as we have the time and can work on the data, so.
All right, so I'll just take the vote again, just as, based on Article 7, what is the desire for the recommendation?
Not recommended.
Not recommend, I'm not recommending.
I'll stay
You'll stay at
neither.
neither?
Neither.
Okay, all right, so it's passed not to recommend. Okay. Article 8, the sports book retail location by petition. What is your desire on that? I'm assuming that's Dover Ball, right? Or don't we know?
They are the people who organized to have it submitted,
Okay.
yes.
Should we allow the operations of sports book retail locations? What is a sports book retail location?
Isn't it doing sport betting over online?
I wouldn't,
Is that just passed last year?
it is something that just passed recently,
Yeah.
I did say that.
What did you say? It's doing
It's sports betting on
sports
online.
betting online?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
But at a retail location, so
Yeah,
there's some
just
other,
like
there's a
Keno.
license,
You
yeah.
have to be a retail place to.
Keno.
to
Oh, is that
have-
why Keno just got added to that place? Oh.
Well, because it got passed last year.
Got it.
So I think it's another gambling thing that they're passing but it has to have certain criteria of where it can be.
Right, and so
Yeah.
just because we pass it, if we pass it, doesn't mean that, the state will only issue however many licenses they issue to whatever the criteria of those places, so there's no guarantee that we'd end up with anybody in Rollinsford who actually gets a license.
I
But-
don't have any opinion on it, so I would default to recommend because I don't really, but it's up to you guys, I think.
I would-
Go
Go ahead.
ahead.
I wouldn't offer to recommend or not recommend. I have no idea of the impact or even really, there's no information here.
But to me, my opinion is that it doesn't affect the town financially. So
No,
and
know,
yeah.
it might draw people in that you wouldn't normally have there.
Well, I thought about that with Keno too, so.
Yeah.
Well, that is something that you might consider, and I'm not trying to sway you, but just, it's not just about what directly financially would affect the town. You certainly have under your purview other resources and other, some data would suggest that gambling establishments increase social issues, gambling, addiction, and maybe you'd have more of a police presence at those locations, or who knows what not. I wouldn't say that you make gut reactions based on those things, but you can certainly, if you know about things like that and have feelings about things like that, that can certainly influence your reason to want to recommend or not recommend something.
I have no knowledge of gambling. Is there a glass that I can use to get a glass of water? Forgot my water bottle. Oh, thanks, you could've just told me I have to get out.
I mean, I don't think you have a
The
Yeah.
things that
pro or
my
con
kids
about
are-
it,
But I'm not gonna recommend something that I don't know anything about. And I don't feel strongly about not recommending.
So the recommendation would be none?
You can just not say
Just not.
anything,
Just-
there's no
okay.
line there,
Okay,
is what I'm
okay,
saying.
Okay,
I
because
think
we
what he's
do
saying.
it to help people understand if it's not recommended, okay, there's a problem, why are they not recommending it? Or
Right.
if it's recommended and there's no
Right.
problem, we
If
should
you're
go
not
ahead and-
recommending it,
Yeah.
it really means I suggest you don't vote for this,
Yeah.
as opposed to a non, like a blank.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, then, Jessica, is your feelings about the sportsbook retail?
I will leave it to you. I will say that mine is, we do not make either.
Yeah, that was Miles too, so that's
Okay.
what we'll do.
Okay.
And then Article 9 is a resolution of fair redistricting by petition. I didn't know what that meant. Caroline did explain it to me, so do you guys know what it is?
Um,
Reading about it.
do you-
So, this is about gerrymandering. It's about how every 10 years after the census, the legislature has to redraw all the congressional lines, all the state representatives and how they represent their people. Those spaces, those geographic areas get redrawn every 10 years by the legislature. The problem is that whatever the group is, so I just want to disclose that I signed that petition publicly because it is a nonpartisan and a non-local petition. The problem with gerrymandering, which got its name from salamander, because these shapes of districts resemble salamanders, because whatever the party is in power after the census draws the district according to the polling results and what benefits their party. So you can try to break up all of the other parties' people so that they don't have unified voting power. So both parties do it. So this article is asking that if it passes, that the select board send notice to the governor and the legislature to say, our people have voted to decide that we want you to get an independent commission together to do this in a way that does not consider voter registrations and election results and things like that, but in a nonpartisan, non-biased, more sensible way.
Recommend.
This compels us to do that
It compels you,
as a select.
yes, I mean, there are no repercussions if you don't, but it is asking for you
Yeah.
to pass the news on essentially.
Okay.
I just heard that salamander thing on a TV show. No, I just heard it like 2 weeks ago, and then someone was like, "Oh, it was named after someone named Jerry," and then
Yes.
something like that. And I don't know what it was. Now I really wonder what I was watching.
Hmm.
Something recent. It might have been in Hamilton.
Okay, so what is your desire to recommend or not to recommend?
Recommend.
Recommend?
I would recommend
Okay,
that.
then it will be recommended by. Right, so those are the only ones that we didn't have, those three, right? And everything else, based on what you heard at the public hearing, you're still gonna recommend going forward with all the other articles?
Oh, yeah.
Jess?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yep,
Okay,
yep.
all right. So that's done, right?
So my question then is, does the board want to wait until Monday to continue to look at the language and think about the order of articles? Or do you want to vote to authorize yourselves to sign a clean version of this once I insert those recommendations and be done with the warrant.
The second one. Do it now.
Okay.
Is this the exact copy that will go on the warrant?
This is the copy except for,
The things we just.
except for what you just did, this is it.
Can you add a comma? Sorry. Article
I'd be
3,
happy to.
the
Article what?
20, Article 3, the 2,500. There's a missing comma there, and,
I'm sorry, where? Can you just?
And with
Article
the end,
three,
question
where?
mark.
the dollar amount.
2500.
Oh, there you go,
And
okay.
also,
There you go,
I'm
thank you, I
sorry.
didn't find the second one. Good job.
Article 14, the police cruisers, the $1,000, the very last
Sorry for all
line.
my
No, it's,
I
there's a lot of
appreciate
numbers in
finding
here. And I don't know why it's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
I never use commas, and I got in trouble today. Literally today, I sent to my boss something, I said 1,000, and before I'd been reporting things in thousands, and then I was trying to tell him 1,000, so I sent him 1,000, and he thought I was saying 1,000,000 because I didn't have, it was just a whole comma nightmare. I should have had a comma, and I hate them.
Yeah, everything else looks good to me.
Okay, so if you, once we adjourn later, if you hang out for 5 minutes, then I'll make those changes and print it, and then you can sign it, and we
Sure.
can be done and post it, and that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need to move?
So would you please vote that pending
we
those
accept-
changes? Yeah.
Okay, so a motion should be made.
I'll make a motion that we authorize to sign the warrant with the changes to Articles 7, 8, and 9 that we discussed.
Okay,
Seconded.
all right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. All right. Sign default budget.
It's in your folder, so, this is part of the process, sorry, not that one, the other one.
Oh,
You got it, Jessica.
Oh,
There you go, right on front.
and that didn't change based on,
No, it didn't, it just had to get entered into the portal, and you have to sign the copy that comes from the portal.
okay, so this is the default, okay. And it, nothing, it's the same as what we've seen before.
Yes. So it's only by categories, it's not broken down the way our budget document is.
Okay.
So you just need to sign it.
Yes.
Well, we're signing, can move on to childcare for deliberative session.
So, there's a room available at the school reserved for childcare.
Is there heat?
I can't speak to that.
Do
Yeah.
children
Everything.
need heat?
I didn't thaw for 2 days after that.
Oh, it was so cold at that meeting.
No kidding. I need to send Rich an
Hmm?
email, because
Stressful.
I brought my
I
party
I had
to.
2 pair of fleece clothes.
Yeah, you just, after a certain number of years, you'll.
Really? Wow, that was frigid.
It was
How could you
terrible.
have an assembly in there? Like if the kids were just sitting for a while?
This
I don't think
weekend.
it's so
It's
bad when
not
it's not
like that
school.
when it's something for the school.
Oh, they don't turn
when
on the
I,
heat?
we can't have conversations.
Oh, okay.
But when I was there, yes, last night, it was nice and toasty, just saying, in the gym, so.
Huh. Well, I imagine it's expensive to heat.
Oh, time.
That makes
Well,
sense.
probably not for the week, well, just like this is too, but I am gonna send him a letter. Either that or we're gonna relocate somewhere.
So what is the question?
Okay, so, so Denise suggested that I put a call out to see if, people are aware of the, if they have children within their, older children within their own families who are willing to volunteer for volunteer hours for school, because they're required to have volunteer hours for school.
Oh,
So there's that, but my question to the board is, are you willing to hire 2 people at what pay rate? Or is it gonna just be not available if we can't find volunteers?
what have we done in the past? I don't remember ever
We
paying them.
haven't had it lots of times.
Oh,
Yes, and then last year, I think we might have gotten volunteers last year, I'm not sure.
Paid.
Were they, I don't remember who was paid, maybe they were
Oh, maybe.
maybe they were, yeah, we're getting,
Um,
yeah. But the year before, I know we had paid people, so, I can't speak to the hourly rate last year, but I think the year before was $10. So, you know,
An hour?
yeah,
Well, I say we just put out something looking for volunteers to come and do it, and if we don't get any volunteers to do it, we just don't have it.
My worry is, so this is a town sanctioned daycare, what if someone gets hurt?
we're covered with that because we
Okay.
have our insurance rider with the school.
Okay.
The bigger thing I would have you consider is the effect on, turnout at the deliberative session. Not that turnout is ever in the you know, for these last, you know, who knows what the turnout would be, but,
I would say pay 2 people like $15 an hour.
Which we didn't budget for.
Well, $30.
Like, it goes for like 10 hours.
Oh,
Well-
does it?
Well,
I didn't
yeah.
realize, oh, I
Well,
thought it was like
I
an
would-
hour.
There's no-
it
2
wouldn't be more
hours.
than 4, I mean,
Jeez, oh crap, 4 hours in that gym?
well, that's about nearly what you did,
Bring
you
your own
know,
space heater.
yeah.
I don't know, I say you put it out there, if you don't get any catches, I mean, we tried.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
I
The
agree.
kids are allowed in the gym if they wanna bring their children. You know, they can sit and read in the corner and,
okay,
but if we get volunteers, yes, we do, but, I mean,
okay.
sure. We're good with
Yeah.
that? Okay,
I'm good with that.
all right. Town administrator job description revision, that was on the one that you sent out.
Yes,
Yeah, okay. I didn't have a problem with it.
did anybody else look at it?
I didn't,
Okay,
sorry.
it's okay, do you,
I trusted Denise's judgment.
What was the revision with,
the revision was in the additional direct report, and then, there was something else, and I brought printouts that don't include that.
Transfers.
Yes, it's in red.
tax collection and planning. Responds to public appeals for transfer station ordinance and other ordinances and policies as enabled by those documents and or the select board. That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm good with those, since we
Yeah.
voted and
Yeah, sounds great.
put them on your plate.
Yeah,
Um,
so, okay, so let's have a motion that we accept the job description revisions.
I make a motion that we accept the job description revisions to the town administrator description.
I will second them.
All right, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Good. All right, recreation deadline for legal review. All right, so recreation met last night. They're working hard, that's all I can say. I mean, they're doing their job, but we that have to take a stand that we are supporting this and it's going to go forward, we can't be wishy-washy anymore about it. It has to be going.
Well, so I don't disagree, but if you're gonna have so are you gonna have the attorney review the parent handbook and the staff handbook? And if so, you know, allow for that feedback. We've got to make sure that, you know, some of those things that, you know, so I have not read those revisions yet. So I don't know what they say, and I will get on that as soon as I can get on that. Yes, you have to decide for the people. I agree that everybody needs to be able to plan on how they're, you know, what they're gonna do for the summer, and you're gonna lose people if this gets delayed too far. At the same time, we need to make sure that it's what it needs to be so that we don't have the same concerns that it was before, and allow, you know, the attorney time to review those things if you're going to have them reviewed. So, which was Primex's recommendation. So, you know, it's for you to decide what to do with that.
I think all the efforts that's gone into redoing the manuals is only a positive thing. I mean, I don't see anything negative in there, and I don't really think that legal will find anything so drastically horrid that would stop us from having our program. I really don't. Do I think we need to have it looked by legal? Yes, I do. But not to the point where I'm gonna say rec isn't going forward. We have to take a stand. Are we going forward with it or are we not? I mean-
I thought we had decided that by including in the budget, but
Well, my
I mean,
assumption too, but we're kinda happy.
Yeah.
I know, Caroline, you're doing it with the best interest of rec, but it's kinda like saying, are we going to, do we have what we need to go forward?
Well, so
We're
my,
working on it.
so my, well, that was my understanding, is that we're working on it, so that we're including it in the budget, which will allow us the opportunity to work on it, but we've just been on the I'm working on it stage. So, you know, that's fine if you wanna decide that it's going forward. What I think needs to happen is a concrete decision of the board that these manuals are going through legal review, and that hopefully you'll get feedback in time that you can react to that. But I haven't had the opportunity to be sure that we are not going to repeat some of the problems that we had last year. With regard to, you know, do we have, you know, like I said, I have not read the revisions, so we may be all set and I don't know.
Okay,
But we've had concerns last year that brought us to the point where we weren't sure that it was a good idea to continue. So we're not at the point where we've alleviated those concerns, when really, maybe they are, and, you know, because the revisions take care of it and the legal review will affirm that. We just don't know that yet. So I'm
Right.
just, the reason that's on the agenda is to sort of decide by what date are we deciding that it's real or that it's not real, or if it's going to legal, by what time do you want that back, so that whatever feedback you get, you have time to react to, because you're right that we need to tell the public for real what's going on.
right, so I think the sooner the better. And my thought is, once our budget is approved, we're immediately gonna start searching for the part-time rec director if it passes. And that person, it will be one of their responsibilities to go through, you know, all of the policies that pertain to rec as well, you know, as
Well,
the
for
committee.
sure.
You know, so it's not gonna stop once, you know,
Well,
once we
agreed.
get going. So I
So-
think we just need to say, yes, we're aiming towards, you know, starting to advertise and getting things going. I think we've heard, we know we have things to work on, and I think that they're doing a great job working on those things. We have 2 new people that are dynamite
they're
and very,
fantastic.
very involved. And I just think that we just say, we are going forward, we picked, last
Okay.
night we picked our start date and, you know, the end date, we picked our
So-
time frame, and they're meeting with Rich next week. And so I just think that we have to be firm that we're going forward. And work
in
will
whatever
not stop.
iteration it
And nothing's gonna stop, we're gonna continue
the
to
way
be
that it-
better.
gets executed might not be the same as last year, right? It could be.
Well, every year it's a little bit different,
Yeah.
and I guess that's part of the concern, because, you know, while they got 2 new members, and that's really great, and they got the 2 largest, most important documents revised,
Mhm.
which is important.
Mhm.
But it's still not really clear, to my mind, in writing, what's involved in doing grant writing, and what are the, you know, deadlines for that, and who's doing it, and, you know, who's going to interview counselors, and what's involved in that, and what is the job description for the rec director, so that we can be sure that, you know, it covers everything, and is there, you know, do other committee members have responsibilities, and if so, what are they, what's
Yeah.
involved in those? So, you know, while we're, you know, off to a really good start, I wanna make sure that we've got all those things covered.
Agreed, and a lot of that's we're gonna have the help once we get a our part-time rec director if it gets passed.
Well, but
So-
that's the big one, is to get that job description written, so
Yep.
that we can make
Yep,
sure that
I
that
agree.
person is,
I will take
Carrying
that
the
on
ball.
and make sure that goes on, that goes forward. And I'll have it for next week, so we can talk about it at our next meeting.
okay, so.
Our rec meeting.
Right, so,
Yeah.
so they're meeting on Wednesday, and then the committee will, is it the intent then the committee will recommend the changes to those 2 handbooks, and then the select board will take that version and send it to legal. I just wanna hit the ground running with that.
I would think that that's an expectation that we can go forward with, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot more work to be done, and I know that, but we're going to do it, we're going to do it well, so it could take a little time to do. But I think you're right, the two manuals are the most important. Now, when you're talking about legal, any idea what the cost is gonna be on that?
Significant but not huge. How big is that? That's about as specific, and, you know, it's not inexpensive, you know, their hourly rate is, I'm not even sure what, but
But we're talking about the law firm that we use.
yes.
Is there any way that we can, you know, put something out looking for pro bono work from lawyers within the town?
Every resident I've ever, you know, and I don't wanna cast generalizations because we actually have quite a few attorneys in town, but any attorney resident that I've ever spoken to is really hesitant to offer a legal opinion unofficially because they're on the hook for that.
Okay.
So, I mean, we can certainly ask, but I would not hold a whole lot of hope for that. It's a significant project, whereas it took a lot of hours for really mostly Celia to do those two manuals. Likewise, it'll take a considerable number of hours for, you know, any other one person to dive into it.
Okay, so I really would like to have like an estimate of what the cost would be. And they might be able to, if we call, in, you know,
I
say
can-
the
I can
manual of
see if we can get an
32
estimate.
pages of
Yeah.
manual 3 times 2 book of manuals.
Absolutely.
What would be the estimated cost? So at least I don't wanna, you know, come back and then it's $5,000,
Right.
you know, but I
Well, you
mean,
should be
I'm
able to
thinking
know what
about
your decision is.
1,200 to 1,500 and whatever it is, but, so let's see if we can get some kind
I
of,
will.
we'll leave it on the agenda for next week about the,
And I'll get a quote in the
Yeah.
meantime.
okay, that would be great, thank you. Rebecca's going forward, Celia, okay,
We'll be sure to cover that at our meeting.
okay. All right, legal updates.
So
I know
in line with that, that's, we touched upon it in an earlier meeting, but there wasn't really any decision about, I believe we only have one open item with the attorney, which is the Comcast franchise, cable
Oh, okay.
franchise agreement. So, that's currently in a one-year extension that expires in July. Do you want me to follow up on that? You know, I'm just, I put it out there because legal is one of those things where, you know, I manage those projects, but at the same time, they do incur an expense, and so where it's lapsed, you know, that can be your intent because you're managing the funds in that way,
Mhm.
and so I don't wanna presume that you wanna keep it going if you don't. So it is the original contract that was dated from like 1978 or something like that, that's been on one-year renewals. So it should be reviewed
Yeah.
and rewritten
Mhm.
at some point.
So you're putting it on here for the permission to contact the lawyers and find out what the status is on it?
Yes.
And an
And-
estimated time of completion on their side?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm assuming they're not working on it without us prompting them.
Well, I guess that's really the point. There hasn't been any bills for it,
Right.
so that would indicate that they're not really working on
Hopefully
it.
they're not working 10 hours a week and.
Well, they don't bill that way, like they don't send quarterly bills or things like that, so I wouldn't expect that that's the case, but because there's an expense to, you know, something that's lapsed, not lapsing.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, we need to get definitely
All right.
an update on it. Okay,
Just one other, so there's not something with legal for our zoning issue?
So E and F both really need to happen.
Okay.
Those two non-publics really need to happen, so I would suggest if you wanna talk about
Okay.
policies that we, like, go through the rest of the agenda and we can do non-publics at the end.
yep, okay.
Good.
Okay, yeah, we can go, yeah. All right, so policy, purchasing policy, have you guys gone through it?
I did read it, I didn't really have any I don't know if you
I-
have copies of it. Sorry, again, do the.
What you, Jessica, did you?
I have two,
I did.
I think mine's in it.
but now you all have my copies, so I'm gonna get my folder. Can you hand that to me, please? I do have another copy of it,
I have mine.
all right. So really, the reason why this became one of the top of the list policies for you all to review is because, the department heads find the $200 threshold for purchase orders to be not really efficient and workable. So they would like for you to reconsider that.
Okay, can we start at page 1?
Sure.
Okay, so on page 1, item D, because we don't have a code of ethics, I think it should be removed from here at this time until we have one and then put it back in.
Or can we say code of ethics policy once adopted?
You could do that as well.
Uh,
That would be fine. I just wanted to either
Yeah,
take it
because
out
it-
because we don't have it yet, or modify it to say once approved, or.
There are other references, so tell me which you prefer. I can take it out altogether, or I can say,
So if we take it out, we're gonna have to reapprove this, once we have those other pieces.
right, so you can just say once approved.
I think once approved.
Yeah, I think
just
that's
so we
fine
don't
too.
lose track of
Okay,
it.
yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. All right. I don't know if I have the right copy here, because I'm seeing the notes. Did you highlight through things when you sent it to us? Did you do the darkening? I don't know if that's me doing it or if you did.
No, I sent things to you.
Okay, then
That
probably
way.
the highlighted one is what I was making recommendations. Okay, so then we went to 3, which is the purchasing of goods and services from 200 to 500. So now, did you put on there, see policies and procedures for town credit cards?
So that was existing, so that's there, and
I think maybe I highlighted to say I needed to go see that. It
I
prompted
don't
me,
recall
was prompting me,
highlighting that.
yeah,
No,
okay.
she highlighted, it's her.
It's her? Okay,
emphasis.
yeah.
so maybe, okay, so
Yeah.
so
But if you did it on the drive, then it highlighted, if you did it on the copy,
Yeah, I don't, yeah, I'm not sure what I did, how I got it, but anyway, so, but we know that we have to look at the policies and procedures for town credit cards as well, to make sure that that's what we want. So what you're saying is that you're recommending that it goes from 200 to 500 for department heads?
I think
For
that
3.
that's I think that's much better. I wouldn't want to suggest that that would satisfy the department heads.
You think they want more?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I have concerns with that, to
Well,
be
right,
honest
so
with
that's
you.
why I'm suggesting that, because I think it's a middle ground that is more acceptable to the board, yet an improvement for the department heads. I just want to be clear, it's not gonna satisfy the department heads.
Well, they can go back to the old way. More checks and less activity. I mean, what fears me the most is they're not looking at their budgets and what balances are remaining in their department lines. when they're making credit card purchases. That scares me the most. And it's already said and done when we get that charge. So somehow we have to give our department heads updated budget of expenses and where their lines stand, like at least monthly.
Absolutely.
But that isn't currently happening, right? Only if they ask for it.
They get it quarterly, and then they may get it more than quarterly, and they certainly get it whenever they want it. And,
Right,
you know,
but I'm just saying, I had a conversation with Chuck too, earlier in the year, but, like, it would be nice to have a copy of what the expenditures, once they're done for the month, so we can see that.
Oh,
too,
and
you know,
absolutely.
so
We're all on the same
thinking-
page about that. That's very workable and doable,
Yeah,
without a
so it
question.
can go electronically, because we're all dealing with the
absolutely.
same thing, and it can go electronically, but I want them to start looking at their lines before they're, inches away from spending it all.
Yep.
And increasing their ability to charge more is going to have that budget line go down much faster. So that's my caution. I'm not saying I won't support it, it's just, I'm cautious that
Yeah, no,
they need to
I
do their
agree
due
that-
diligence.
just because we're giving them this extra latitude.
Doesn't mean they have to spend it.
Yeah,
But I understand what they want and why they want it. But I also, they have to understand that they really need to be careful when they're using their credit cards. Because, you're not filling out POs, you're not doing any of the stuff, it's just going through. And so,
So, yes, and when you look at this, so once we implement a new purchasing policy, we need to be sure that, we're making sure that the purchase orders that are sought before the purchase is.
absolutely.
So to that end, the purchasing policy needs to reflect what one does in an emergency and define an emergency so that department heads understand when they can just get what they need because they need it. And get a retroactive purchase order or then what?
Yeah, 90% of the time on certain things, PO came with invoice. That's not getting authorization before spending. So we have to be a little firmer on that, I think.
A lot
Especially when we're talking about some, thousands of dollars.
Right.
I think they check their budgets, I'm not doubting that, but sometimes they don't understand why we have to have some restrictions certain times of the month and certain times of the year where we may not wanna have a lot of cash flow going out,
Well, there's that, and so, that's something that we can speak to in the policy if you wanna add things to that effect, the 2 months of the year when you would want them to think differently, but define that, so the month before each tax bill goes out, when it gets tight, or maybe it's 6 weeks, or whatever you decide you want it to reflect, what would you write, how would you want their behavior to be different?
I just think that emergencies have to be a real emergency, that you're down and out and you
Well-
can't perform anything else, and you make a phone call to say, I have to do this.
Right,
If
so,
it's, a certain dollar amount, and it's either to you or to the chair of the select board, saying, okay, this is the situation, we need to go forward on this, can I do this, and provide backup later. I know that there's times, especially, with all three departments, outside of, highway, fire, and police.
so section 9 on page 8, if you're looking at landscape, that's not gonna help you, Denise, but, section 9 anyway speaks to emergencies. It does say that they tell the select board, I don't know if you wanna,
doesn't hurt to,
with the second
Sentence,
sentence of the
no,
second paragraph, I don't know, like, if that remains the board or if that becomes my responsibility.
Well, I would say it could be both,
I would say,
and or.
And/or,
You know, just because board members may not be available,
well,
and,
they
you
don't,
know,
this isn't saying they get approval, they're saying they notify.
we have an emergency and this is the situation,
Yeah.
and.
Because I don't think you
This
should
is-
wait for an approval if the heat's out, right?
Right.
Right, right. No, yeah, absolutely, but is, I'm trying to use an example, but, I can't think of an example.
extra shovels,
Extra shovels is,
not an emergency. I'm not saying anybody did that, I'm just,
No,
you're
yeah,
looking for
I
a
mean,
non-emergency.
okay, so.
It's easy to spend $200 and you can buy extra shovels and easily come over $200.
Yeah, I mean, just a major incident with a car or a fire
That would
truck
be an
or a
emergency.
highway, you know, that you can't do anything with that vehicle. Can I bring it in to get it fixed?
Well,
You know,
right.
that kind of thing,
I
or,
don't think that we should, I like the way it's worded right now, which is that I think that we should maintain a level of giving the department heads autonomy to, you know, I'm not in favor of, I trust them to make the judgment that they made. I think that it would have been, if the chief had to call us yesterday or whenever the heat was out or whatever, he's not gonna wanna do that. And we also put him in that position and hope that he would have the judgment to make the right choice, which was to call and have the heat replaced and fixed or whatever. I don't think that we should ask them to, if it's an emergency and we've hired them and trust them to be department heads, I think they should be able to make that decision without having to call and notify anyone ahead of time. I think that this makes sense, that they call out, they let us know as soon as what happened, as soon as they can.
I don't disagree with you. I think, I'm thinking of other things. I just remember people sitting across from us who are now coming in to get purchase orders signed, invoice in hand and
Oh,
purchase
yeah,
order.
they're not,
That
Yeah, but
isn't
that's
acceptable.
different than an emergency.
Well,
Yeah, that's-
but they're saying, but I needed it right away. Okay, so define what you need right away, you know, and fixing a boiler in the winter months of a building, to me, does
Right.
not have to
I
get
think that's
any
completely different
authorization.
than this section though. I think that that's a whole other just discussion that we need to have
Yeah,
with them, but that's not I think the purchasing policy as it stands actually addresses that behavior, we've just not been enforcing it.
mhm.
But
Well,
I think
that's
that's different than this conversation, which is that, I think this makes sense, select board shall be notified as soon as practical, as soon as practicable, is that a word?
yeah.
I usually think I'm pretty good with words. Soon as practicable as the emergency needs to city purchase.
So I think in the future, when someone shows up
That's
with
what
an
I thought too.
invoice, we ask, was this an emergency?
Right, right.
And
I'm just saying, there was a lot last
Oh,
year
yeah.
with invoice
no,
and tax.
it's-
So, I'm not trying to micromanage either, I just think that town money needs to be
No,
treated as
practicable is a
such,
word.
so, and I'm not, okay. I'm okay with
Are you okay
nine.
with the length, yeah?
Yeah, I'm okay with that,
Able to be done or put into practice successfully, it is a word.
It wasn't mine, by the way.
but yeah, I mean, I just, departments may seem to feel differently than maybe the board would of what a really an emergency is, you know?
Right.
So, having a phone call, walk it through, can get an answer saying, okay, yeah, you know, but I would never hold them hostage for heat, or, you know, if they're down, a major piece of equipment, the dump truck that needs to be plowed tomorrow, you know, or a fire truck needs to be, I'm not saying that that can't happen, but at least notify us when it does happen, so we are prepared.
So, if a vehicle requires emergency repair, and then they're doing a purchase order after the fact, should that be subject to a purchase order? Or is it enough to tell the office that, and/or the board, that there was that emergency? Is it helpful or useful to you to go through that purchase order policy for an emergency expense?
I would say no.
I would say no if notification has been given. And, you know, I'm okay with you saying to the town administrator / select board, whichever one they can get in touch with, you know, and they have our numbers, so it shouldn't be a task for them to do that, just on emergent, I mean, I'm talking about emergencies that possibly will be a lot of money, you know, so.
So I will rewrite this to reflect that emergency expenditures as defined will not be subject to the purchase order provision.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
because there's really no point with that.
because it's an after the fact, you know, but we have to know it's happened, that's it. Or it's gonna
Okay,
get, okay?
okay, I will make that revision. So, I'm sorry, going back to the beginning.
Okay, so how do we feel about increasing their goods to 500?
Great.
You okay with that?
So just to, so at up to 500, it's a limited purchase order. Or am I reading this wrong?
So I would go to number 3,
Mm-hmm.
and it's number 3, you're changing number 3 to be 500 instead of
This says
200,
200.
because that's current.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm
this is
sorry.
not proposed, so this is
Oh, you don't
current.
have showing the revisions with it crossed out and have Bob in next
No.
one? Oh, okay.
So we have multiple versions going
Oh,
on,
okay.
good to know, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I
that-
can-
that's why
Oh,
I was
mine's different
confused.
too.
Okay, maybe the copies you had in hand, because
We're
I
different from
have
the
one
older
from the,
copies,
was sent
okay.
to us, okay.
All right, so I
So,
apologize for that.
yeah, so what she's proposing is increased to 500, which I don't have a problem with.
Yep, nope, I'm good.
And then also under other means, she's crossing off the first sentence in there,
Okay,
okay?
yep,
And then on number 4, she's proposing it, instead of 500, it's 1,000. Purchasing goods and services up to 1,000.
okay. So between 501 and 1,000, they follow number 4. True?
Right. So that's
Okay,
laid
so-
out in the table
Yeah.
near the back.
Okay,
Like-
so on page, under 3 though, isn't that 500, you're recommending 1,000?
So,
You go 4, you go to the next page, the first paragraph, it says 500, shouldn't that be 1,000?
Yep.
Limited
that
purchase,
would be a,
Yep.
because you're crossing it off on,
Yes.
okay, so you have to change that to
yes, got
1,000.
it, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, the table is actually correct.
Okay, and so then number 5 would be 1,000 to 3,000?
yep, yep. Okay. And then what you're saying is they need to have a, demonstrate comparative information. Um, Okay. And she's saying is that we need to have written quotes to be able to compare to see. And it would then be, once it's turned into, and the board or the town administrator, that's when authorization will happen, not before. Okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
And then on D goes over to the next page.
Well, you're, everybody else is
Mhm.
landscape, so
Oh.
and you're
Oh.
portrait.
Sorry, guys. All right.
What number are you, what section are you
That
in?
was 5.
5.
It probably didn't go over on the next page, on,
Yeah.
it's all stayed together, okay, so 6 is going from 3,000 to no more than 10,000, and and what they need to do is, ascertain 3 quotations,
Uh-huh.
greater than 3, 3,000, no more than 10, so they are required to give us 3 quotations to make sure that we're getting the best price.
But it does say in G that you're not bound by that, you can go with the greatest value, but that you just have 3 quotes to choose from. And you also can waive, in F, you can waive the 3 quotes if you can't find 3 vendors to respond.
Yep,
Right.
yep. I asked you this question earlier. Who is the board of trustees? You answered it, and I can't remember what you
Okay, so
said.
this is trying to be in, so it's a town policy when you adopt it. But it's trying to be respectful of the library trustees because they have authority over their own funds.
Mhm.
So, I think it's worth passing it by them to see how they feel about this. It's not as though they typically procure large dollar amount purchases
Mhm.
and so forth. I believe that you have the authority to implement this policy over them,
Mhm.
but it's worth talking to them about, I'm not sure, because they're town funds.
Yep.
But it's worth talking to NHMA about to make sure that we're, or else I might revisit the, library trustee laws, because they're
What
different.
about the sanitary?
They're not the same as library trustees, but they are trustees, so I don't really know. For the purposes of this, I think it's worth checking in with the municipal association to see, if they have, if you can do this over them, which I believe you can, but we should check that.
Okay.
So then 7, going from 10 to no more than 25,000, which requires 3 proposals as well, and something else.
So the RFPs need to be on the town website.
Competitive bidding, yeah.
Competitive bidding.
There's an extra comma in C, 7C. Following board of trustees, right?
Which one?
Letter C.
So you're getting 3 quotes, but if for some reason you don't, so you're looking for 3 quotes minimally, but if you
Yep.
don't get 3 quotes, if you've got 2 and you're happy with the 2 and you feel as though you can't get a third, you have the right, you essentially have the right to just waive the 3 quote requirement.
I think that the semicolon is extraneous also. Maybe there's no semicolon in your registration.
I think it's probably a comma rather than a semicolon.
Yeah. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Should we say in section 8, unless waived by the select board? So it says town attorney will review,
You can say something like the select board shall consider.
because 13 says we can waive that.
can always waive your policies. You don't
Right,
really,
it's a policy.
yeah, it's a policy. You don't really have to follow it. It's a guideline of best practices. I do want to bring your attention to number 10 when you get there.
In there.
Okay, so blanket purchase orders was something we weren't really able to implement before we had a bookkeeper who could focus on it. So the benefit of a blanket purchase order is that for something like gravel that you know you're gonna need a lot of, but you're not sure how much, and it's over a period of time, you can approve a purchase order for half of the budget amount, or a random amount of money within the budget, or for the whole budget amount, at the beginning of the year, or at any time of the year, and then you can just, submit invoices against the purchase order. So, that happens to a limited extent now with things like gravel, because, for example, the highway department knows that they're gonna need a certain amount, and it's gonna be more than one truckload, and it probably is over 3 or 4 invoices, possibly. It would be helpful if they were separated into, we don't have a process for this. We have purchase orders, and purchase orders are typically intended for one purchase with one invoice, and they're paid and done with, and they're for however much they are, and there may be some left over. Blankets, I think, should be tracked separately, so that we can have a spreadsheet that accounts for which invoice numbers against it, just because the format, I think, would, it would just be easier if it were separate. So, I'm proposing that we change the way we work, we have some things, approved by the board. So every invoice that comes through here gets approved by somebody. So if it's under $200, or now with this, under $500, then if it doesn't fall under a department head, then I can approve it and it gets paid. Otherwise, if it falls under a department, the department head verifies that it happened and that they have it and they're not returning it, they're satisfied, we can pay it. Do you want to try to address those things that are currently in that folder that you approve or some of them, such as salt? So salt is something that he does not typically get a purchase order for because it's just been historical practice, and I think it's because he orders it when he needs it. It's not exactly an emergency, although it can be, but it's just sort of, I don't know why it's just always been handled separately. But you can have a blanket purchase order for an amount that makes the board comfortable, and it doesn't have to be the whole,
I would say
Budget
no more
amount.
than 80% of the budget amount, like for gravel or for salt or something like that. Because again, they're not accounting people, they have to watch it,
Well-
or we have to watch it and say, okay, this last purchase put you at 70% of your budget and we still have 4 months. What we may need salt and sand.
well, and you also don't want to hand tie your ability to move the money around if you want to move the money
That's my
around.
point,
Yeah.
right. So just because it's in their mind doesn't mean it's theirs forever if there's something else that comes up. But I would never authorize a blanket PO to be the full value of the line,
I agree.
So either it's 75% or maybe it's 65% or something of that, put a percentage. And it can always be readdressed when it gets closer to that, when we're halfway out of winter and we still have, the other half of winter left. We can readdress it and put more money towards that blanket PO. But I would never give them 100%.
Yeah, we would decide that each time we put one out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, but I think, you know, to be in fairness across the board, you know, making a statement saying any blanket PO, I would go 75% of it, and, you know, and that leaves some room for emergencies that may occur. And, you know, we also just make sure that, because I don't know, I think George is probably the one that will benefit this the most, with his salt and sand and
That's the most.
that kind of, I mean,
supplied
that's
to-
what he does. I don't know how fire and police would have a need for a blanket PO.
Fire, they're getting their air tanks refilled, I don't know how often they do that. It does cost.
The air tanks, no, they go to some sort of,
Oh, I thought they had to pay,
Well, I think
they
they're
pay to be,
fittings and,
that's not what she said. She
I
said
thought they
fill.
had to pay to
To have their
them
tanks
filled.
filled, no,
Yeah.
they belong to the association
Oh,
that buys the air truck,
got
and
it.
it's stored in Summersworth or whatever, but it's not something you have to pay every time you have your tanks filled.
Am I thinking about something else?
It must be, because that's
I thought there was something they had to pay to have filled, but whatever.
not their tanks.
Literally doesn't matter.
But I mean, they don't have anything that's
I can't think of anything
that
for them.
either one of those would,
Hoses,
Monday it's gonna happen, yeah, but I do see how this would benefit George.
Well, and also, do you want it to benefit you all in electric and fuel bills? Like, or do you want to continue to improve those? Do you know, electricity and heat?
we're not controlling it, so,
We're just signing
We're
it
just
because
signing
it is what it is.
right?
I mean, I think if you review them, you can sign those because it's something that happens after the fact. And if anything goes up so drastically with no explanation, you would notify the board. I mean, I can't see waiting for us to sign electric bill or credit card
Vehicle
bill.
fuel, cell phone.
Vehicle fuel.
So maybe we can come up with a list of those types of
Cell
things.
phone, I mean, those are all after the fact.
Yeah, utilities.
They're utilities. I mean,
Maybe we can just say utilities,
I think that
water, sewer.
anything within the fire station or highway or police department or
So-
town hall.
I would
Um,
suggest maybe, you know, think about it this way, what do you approve that you really think you still want to approve? Like maybe the credit card or legal bills, are there?
Legal for sure. We
Um,
have to have a review of that for sure. Yeah, I mean,
The credit card, you know,
the credit card, like, this is after the fact, we're just signing it to get it processed. I mean, I think that as the town administrator, you could do that. And so we're not taking, you might want to look at like a consultant bill.
well,
And those kind of things.
but I can, so again, you know, as the person who manages planning, can I approve, you know, would you delegate that to me to approve? Or do you still want to see them and approve them?
I just don't know, we're just gonna sign them because we don't know, we think it's gone through the proper process of looking at it and it's not anything that's gonna be changed.
Well, that stuff is reimbursable by and large.
It is.
Right.
No, like the Morton Salt, I mean, I think that this is something that, you know, this, and again, if we did a blanket PO process, it would be part of it. Your responsibility, if you're gonna take on the signature of these, is to alert us of anything that you find that
Unusual or
unusual
out
or,
of budget
know,
trending.
right, and, you know, we're only in July and we spent electricity, okay, something big is happening,
Well,
you know.
but also remember, you're getting your monthly expenditure reports, so you can
Right.
also see that too.
Yeah, and then we say, okay, we want to start seeing these for a little bit, see what's going on with
Sure.
this. You know, so I think anything to do with facilities, as in electricity, the
Like
propane, all
operational.
operational
Yeah.
stuff, as absolutely, let me just revise my thought, just, I do not want the responsibilities of the select board to go on you if it's going to overwhelm you. So you have to let us know if too much is going on your plate.
Approving bills really is not,
Because
because
you're there at the time, Chuck's giving them to you, or
I'm
whoever does the
looking at them
mail.
anyway.
Right,
you know.
okay, but all I'm saying, and if it affects your office and your, what do I wanna say?
It-
If it affects you personally in some fashion of how your job, it should go to us. I'm not
I
saying it-
understand.
You understand what
I
I'm
do
saying?
understand what
Okay.
you're trying not to burden me, and I appreciate that, but really, it's a benefit to us because we're, I have to look at them anyway, but it helps us pay them faster.
Right, it's more efficient, for
It is more
sure,
efficient.
and I don't, but anything that you see that just stands out, you
Oh.
just run by us.
Absolutely.
But it also, if it's something that you have purchased, then you can't approve it.
That's a really good point, because, we don't really have a mechanism for that right now.
Are you purchasing anything?
Well,
I
what if-
purchase supplies and I purchase postage. It's typically limited to that.
Yeah,
Google is charged to my credit card every month. That's an automatic thing.
if that's the
um,
entire Google, not just your.
It is, it's the
Yeah, I'm
entire
just, what do
Google.
I wanna say, what if you wanted,
I wanna buy a new
two
desk,
brand
you know,
new
like.
file cabinets, or for your
Right.
office, or a brand new desk, that has to come to us.
We need to,
Even
we
though
should
it's-
write that somehow, because that's not currently the case.
I know,
And that's fine, but
Yeah.
we need to,
I'm just saying, if it affects you personally within the job that you're doing, you at least need to run it by the select board. You know, and
is
whether or not
that,
we
is
think
that within $500, or, you know?
I think just because
Or is it like regular supplies?
it's not pencils and paper, okay?
Yeah,
Because it's
so-
not just you, it's the whole office. You're buying it for the whole office. But if it's something that is not a routine, everyday expense, and you want to, I mean,
It's greater than $501.
well,
I think your concern is
you're signing your own.
unbudgeted.
Unbudgeted, yeah,
Um,
yeah. But another great area in the budget, because there's a lot of unbudgeted stuff, because we have just said, okay, that's kinda good, let's keep it there, and nobody's telling them. And again, that's something we need to work on this year, because, you know, supplies or equipment is just not good enough anymore, in my opinion, you know, for any department. So we need to be, when they're doing their budgets, and their equipment line is $10,000, I wanna know what your intent is to spend that $10,000. And then, that would be you looking and saying, oh, we keep on buying all this kind of stuff, but your intent is not getting, so how is that gonna get, you know what I'm saying? That
Well, but all I can do is alert that
the board.
to you, yes.
Exactly,
yeah.
so then we can approach. But I'm just saying, I just wanna make sure that we don't have that conflict with anything that you would order. We'd be approving it as well, that's all. Second set of eyes, but not routine
I just
supplies
want
and
it
stuff.
defined so that we're all on the same page.
Let me work on that part of it, and I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
It's more covering you,
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't you know,
but I'm not talking about paper, and I'm not talking about pencils and binders and stuff for the,
I think we pretty much
office.
have that in place, but I wanna make sure that we have it in writing such that
Yep.
you feel as though anyone can follow it, and I feel as though whatever I do, I'm protected if I'm following it, you know?
no, that's fine, it's just, it's more about bigger purchases, not
Oh, I
the
get that.
$500 ones. you
I
know.
just wanna be clear.
Yep.
So we're all on the same
And,
page.
you know, and this is something we hope will go for the next 100 years, so whoever else is there behind
Oh,
you,
you are an optimist, aren't you?
I'm gonna be here to deal with
Good
it. in
idealist,
100 years.
okay.
Okay, so,
Thank you
are
for
we in
that.
agreement that she would be okay to authorize the other,
Yeah,
the invoices?
Yep.
For facilities
Yes.
and for, small purchases from the department heads? As long as
Well-
it's within their budget?
Well,
I'm
no,
not approving anything of department heads. Department heads,
they get
you know,
to,
they have the authority to spend up to $500. So all I'm doing is when an invoice comes in, they sign off on it saying, yes, I really did receive that.
Okay, and so we're
then
not
it
gonna
gets
sign on
processed.
it, we're not gonna sign it either?
Nope.
Well, that's how it's written, and that's currently what happens under $200. You're not seeing anything that happens under $200. And so
Well,
this is,
unless they write POs, which they have done that a lot, so that it doesn't really have to have a PO on it.
right, like that, they have the authority to spend at will within their budget
Mhm.
up to currently $200,
Mhm.
and now we're proposing to change that to $500.
Right, okay, so, yeah, I think that's.
So I'm not
acceptable.
approving anything that a department does or doesn't do.
Mhm.
I'm just verifying that if it's over that threshold, that they do have a purchase order for it.
Mhm.
And then they still, even if they have a purchase order, they have to sign the invoice to indicate that not only did they get the purchase order, but they really did buy it and they're happy with it, they
Yeah.
didn't return it, they
Yeah.
didn't overcharge me, whatever
Right,
like that.
Right,
Um,
agreed, okay.
but I'm not approving anything they do.
Okay, all right. So, you are, however, will be the authorizing signature for anything that happens in this building for purchases. Like office supplies. They have to come to you before they can order something, is what I'm asking. Is that your understanding?
As it is now, yes, with the exception of the janitor who has the ability to go off-site and buy cleaning supplies and paper towels. That's
And you're comfortable with that?
absolutely, because that's, I would take that on an individual by individual basis.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
But no one can buy something without first going through you in this office, Chuck, Andrea, and Kate.
Nobody has a mechanism to do that I'd
Any
have to
longer.
think about I'd have to think about making sure that's true, like, somebody could invoice something.
Right.
I think it should, we gotta spell it out in the policy, I would say.
Well,
Um,
none of them have budgets, so they shouldn't have buying power.
Well, election lunches,
Okay, Kate does have a budget, but Andrea and Chuck don't, or Tom
Right.
Clark, or any of those. So if they need to buy something, they need to go to you first and have it authorized before it can be purchased, not
Yes.
after it's purchased.
agreed.
Okay,
I wanna, we just need to make sure that,
yeah, I can write up some version.
and where we're sticking it in here, and I think I just wanna, I guess, reread this with that in mind to make sure that this language reflects that, because
Right.
it talks about department heads, but maybe it's worth defining department heads or defining non-department heads or something so that we're really,
Well, now, department heads, it's on their responsibility, but for instance, lieutenant may go downstairs and purchase something or arrange to have something purchased for Bob, but it's his responsibility because it's his budget as the
well,
department
because he
head.
authorized that person.
Purchase to
So
do it.
likewise, I
For
would
the fire
ask Chuck to
department.
go online and buy the one or two things that I tell him to
Yes,
buy, and if he
yes.
does what I'm asking him to do, then it's the same thing,
It-
really.
Yes, so that's kind of the point I was getting to, is, because fire might do the same thing.
Yes, everybody
And
does that.
highway may do the same
Yes.
thing. So, but they have to, the one who's gonna take the responsibility is the department head, which
Right,
is,
so the idea, right, so that's me in this
it would be
case.
you, and then it would be Bob, Mark, Ed, and then George.
Yeah.
We have 5 department heads. Agreed? Yeah? Or do you
Yes.
count Tom as a department?
No,
No, he's under you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So do we wanna list them so it's clear who the
that's what I'm
department is? Okay.
doing, yeah.
Library or no?
Well-
Their budget is a little different.
They
than-
are a department though, and she is a department head, but I don't know how, we have to reread the whole authority of the library trustees, because we can't give her authority that the library trustees don't give her. She reports to the library trustees, so we can't give her the authority to do something that
Yeah.
the library
Okay.
trustees say she can't do,
I think we just need to not have them be part of that department head. I understand what you're saying, but
I have a
they have
question
their own
mark.
rules to
Yeah.
follow because of their own leaders. So, all right.
Yeah,
Okay. It's 9 o'clock, how much further do we wanna go?
I would say let's go into non-public and,
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I think
I'm
we
good
made
with that.
good progress here.
Let's
thank
do
you for that, I will send out revisions.
Okay,
All right, I will move that we go
Oh.
into.
Can we have community input before we go?
No.
No.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Please.
he said no, so no.
I would strongly ask you guys to reconsider possibly paying one person, one adult, who may already be a town employee, to do the deliberative session and supervise the volunteers. Just because if you have somebody from the library, the school, or the rec department who have already completed their paperwork, they've already had a background check, it might make the families feel more comfortable. And if we bring our children, I have been looked at and spoken to before about my children being obnoxious and disrupting the meeting. And I'd rather not put myself or any of the other constituents in the town in that position where my children are being disruptive and you're having to talk over them or having to worry about them. I'd rather have a place where they can go and be safe, and there's an adult who's been trained or knows the policies of the town just to oversee the people that are there. You have several resources in town that you can tap into for just one person and then have a bunch of volunteers underneath them. I'm just asking you to reconsider that. And then I would also, on your purchasing policy, since we're planning to go ahead with a rec director, put a 6th department head as your rec director pending approval.
The rec director is in a department, head. The person works under the board of selectmen.
Okay.
At this point, we just have to get it going. It can be changed later. Go ahead.
Just a point of, are you meeting next Monday?
Yes,
Okay, because Mark from
Monday the
Doverville,
27th, you have a public
We
hearing.
have a public hearing at 6 and then a meeting at 6:30.
Mark from Doverville had intended to come to your next select board meeting, but he didn't realize tonight was a meeting. So he would like to speak to you about the sports.
And why isn't he contacting us and not going through you?
Don't ask me.
That
He
should-
just asked me when the next select board meeting was, that's all he asked.
He's welcome to do that.
Hmm?
He's welcome to do that.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed when we were out for that long period of time with the doors closed,
Uh-huh,
I walked in here, it was a lot warmer.
yeah,
And
you're
so I
actually
would
right.
suggest
You close the door.
keep them, yeah,
Or keep them at least.
yeah. And
We
just
obviously
maybe
not-
ajar a teeny
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
but you
Are
can
you
feel
saying that
it.
you're cold there, or that it's too warm in here?
No, it was
No,
It was warmer in here,
warmer.
now it's cold.
Yeah,
I mean,
Oh, that during the meeting that we
During the
closed
meeting, we
them
could just-
a little
just
bit?
not lock
Yeah.
it, but have
Okay,
it open
okay.
that much so that people can come
Yeah.
and go, but
but you can
good
feel
point.
the draft.
You could. The other thing is, have we, I know we haven't got the windows done yet. Have we got an update on that?
Oh, are they leaking? I am a shrink master. Do you use these blinds?
Oh, I know what
Wrapping
you're talking
windows?
about.
I did it and I was like, this is gonna be the hardest thing in the
Mm-mm.
planet, and I did it and it was so easy, and I'm so bad at those things. And they sell the kits for like, I don't know, $5. They probably make them big enough for this, cause yeah, they do, cause they make them big enough for double doors. And you
Yeah.
put a sticky strip all around the edge, and then you take saran wrap basically and stick it over and then you take a hair dryer and you hair dry it, and it all shrinks up, and it is so cool, and it is amazing how much it stops. Like if you're standing in my bathroom and you put your hand up to my window, you could feel wind blowing in. But if you put the shrink wrap up, it stops it.
Mhm.
But anyway, if we do that, then you can't access the blinds. I don't know, I just interrupted whoever was talking, but that would
be me.
stop a lot of people. Feel very passionately, and it got ripped down the next week because we had a problem in there and we needed to use the window, whatever.
What my thought process was, that, have we ever thought about putting thermal shades up?
Oh, those make a difference too.
They do, they're really expensive.
Mm.
That's like $40 a panel.
No, not curtains.
Okay.
I
then
got
know.
thermal cellular
I was
shades.
No, I'm talking about a an
Cellular.
insulated shade that comes down.
Cellular, like holes in the, like,
No,
no.
They're just-
No,
It's
they're just a
overlaid.
soft, they're like a padded shade that will
Insulated,
block the
like
window.
insulated, well, so,
But the ability to put it up and down if you wanted to.
Thermal shades.
oh, I know, I can go into the weeds about thermal shades, okay? I just,
Just like trash,
Five past
you
nine.
passion.
oh, I could, no, I just spent 20 years in the industry. So,
Oh
we
my
could talk
gosh.
about it, but,
Window treatment industry?
Yes.
Another day. You can do it, but let's wait, and it's gonna be expensive, so let's
It's
wait
like
and see.
$60 for a
Let's wait and
smallish
see how far repair gets, and then if repair really,
Doesn't solve the problem.
then let's talk about it.
Well, even just for this one room, or maybe, I don't know. I'm tired of being frozen in leaving here. So, I mean, we either gotta crank up the heat or we gotta.
Well, the other thing I would suggest, which is a lot
And
less
then smiles will be
expensive,
so hard.
if it continues to be a problem, is more tight and shrink wrap, is a lot more tight and or shrink wrap is a
Okay.
lot less expensive
And then
than,
the shade, okay, all right. It's just that, it just needs to, and I know that next door, they're always cold for, when they first come in, right? Because it's,
well, we've managed that much better because, to Salme's point, if you close these doors, so we have a routine now where at night we close these doors
Mhm.
so that this thermostat is not picking up the hall heat.
mm-hmm,
Then, when the first person in the morning opens up those two doors so
Mhm.
that this is open with the front office,
mm-hmm,
and then that triggers this heat. When we turn this heat up, that front office actually warms up now, which wasn't the
Okay.
case before because it was closed off from the thermostat that was getting, anyway, so
okay,
it's
that's good.
better.
That's good, okay.
It's not awesome, but it's much
All right.
better.
Well, let's hope that they'll come and fix the windows and hopefully that does a big part of
Probably the
it.
second or third week in February.
But
We're
if
hoping
not,
this
maybe
month.
we can get drafters for the bottom or whatever, you know,
The more tight sticky stuff, and
yeah.
the shrink wrap's actually not a bad idea, except for,
Yes.
I'm not sure if we have a ladder tall
Well
enough.
enough to do
We have
it,
to call the
yeah.
fire department to get a ladder.
Yeah,
I don't
Yeah.
have a ladder.
yeah. But anyway, okay, well, we just need to work on it.
Thank you for the conversation, because
Mhm.
it's, we can do something for sure.
There's tape too,
Yeah, there are all kinds of things.
Case?
tape that
Yeah.
you can put
Yeah.
on,
Oh.
seal the
Um,
cracks.
I think we've beat this horse a little too.
Past
Miles
miles, 10 tries.
Yeah. All right, we'll work on it though, because it is getting cold, so. All right, so we're going into non-public. You're all set? Okay.
I move we go into non-public, RSA 91A, 1-3, section 2, letter A, personnel.
All right, and we're gonna come out and we're gonna go home, so.